It's Wednesday, August 17th, and this is now on HNN.
No office in this land is more important than the principles that we are all sworn to protect.
What Congresswoman Liz Cheney's primary election loss says about the state of the Republican Party.
This isn't really an act we can ignore.
2 dogs are dead after escaping the Kauai Humane Society following a bizarre break-in.
Just because maybe it's because it doesn't make any sense.
Should schools start later in the morning? We'll talk about the research that shows benefits for students and learning.
They do stay up slightly later, but they more than make up for it with the additional sleep that they're able to gain.
All these stories plus details on NASA's next mission to the moon. That's coming up on This Is Now.
This primary election is over, but now the real work begins.
Wyoming Congresswoman and one of the Republican Party's biggest Trump critics, Liz Cheney, lost the battle for her seat by even greater margins than polls predicted.
That's right. Voters there chose to send the Trump-backed challenger to Congress instead. We discuss this and more political developments with Hawaii News Now's White House correspondent John Decker in today's Talker.
It's not surprising. We saw this as we saw polling associated with this congressional race through the past few months. In fact, the number in terms of what her margin of loss was much larger than what was projected based upon the polling that we've seen. So this was not a good night for Liz Cheney. And it's not a good night, she would say, in terms of the way the Republican Party is moving and the way that it views the 2020 presidential election.
Yeah, and the Congresswoman is reportedly considering a run for president now. What are her chances?
Well, based upon the results last night, based upon results that we've seen in Republican primaries all across the country, they're not very good. She indicated today in an interview on the Today Show that she is contemplating a run for the Republican nomination in 2024. She said that she will make a decision in the coming months. But she is clearly, in terms of her thinking, in the minority in the Republican Party. It is Donald Trump's party. That's pretty clear. And I've always maintained that if Donald Trump decides he wants to run again in 2024, it's his nomination to lose. He seems to have a firm grasp on the Republican Party. And we'll have to wait and see what Liz Cheney ultimately decides to do.
Now, in other headlines, today, Rudy Giuliani testified as part of the 2020 Georgia election probe. What do we know about his testimony?
Well, this testimony was required after a judge weighed in on this. This is someone that the district attorney in Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia, wished to hear from. And why is that? It's because of the first witness who has testified before this special grand jury. The first witness was the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia, who in his testimony, he said this publicly, he told about the pressure that was brought to bear by Rudy Giuliani on the Secretary of State to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Specifically, according to Brad Raffensperger, the Republican Secretary of State, Giuliani asked him to throw out ballots before an audit of the election results in Georgia had taken place. And I'm certain that Rudy Giuliani will be asked about that during the course of his testimony.
And speaking of former President Trump, he's asking a judge to unseal the affidavit that was connected to the FBI's search of Mar-a-Lago. Do we expect that affidavit to be released?
We do not. I do not. Speaking as a lawyer, it is just so uncommon, Ashley, to see an affidavit unsealed associated with the search warrant while an investigation is ongoing. And that's the case with the Department of Justice's investigation. And we know, based upon a filing that the DOJ made, they are very much opposed to this. Why is that? Because there's so much information contained in that affidavit which would give a roadmap as to where this investigation has taken the DOJ so far. What witnesses they've spoken to, who has cooperated with this investigation, who has spoken to the grand jury, what type of evidence they have, even the possibility of surveillance tapes that have been acquired by the DOJ as a part of their investigation. They do not want anyone to see this. They certainly don't want the Trump team or the former president to learn of how far along their investigation is thus far.
All right, Hawaii News Now's White House correspondent John Decker. Appreciate the time, John.
Hawaii is expanding eligibility for the monkeypox vaccine after confirming 4 more cases. One has a history of traveling outside the state, another is linked to a previously reported infection, and one is still under investigation. The 4th was a visitor diagnosed on the Garden Isle. In total, 16 cases have been reported in Hawaii since June. That's just a fraction of the 12,000 cases confirmed nationwide. And this new development today, Queer Eye star Jonathan Van Ness penned an essay for Time magazine on the topic of monkeypox. He blasted the Biden administration's slow vaccine rollout, comparing it to the early days of the AIDS epidemic. Van Ness wrote he believes the response is fueled by homophobia and transphobia. The Biden administration declared monkeypox a public health emergency earlier this month. Officials announced 442,000 doses of the vaccine will be made available to states. Van Ness called the move a day late, a dollar short. Right now, monkeypox is primarily affecting men who have sex with men, but it's not considered a sexually transmitted disease and can infect anyone. So here's what you need to know about that vaccine. The expanded eligibility now includes Hawaii residents 18 and older who fall into these categories: had close contact in the last 14 days with a person with known or suspected monkeypox infection, certain members of the LGBTQ community with multiple or anonymous sexual partners, severely immunocompromised residents, or people with certain skin conditions. Now, we have all this information published on your H&N digital platforms.
Residents at an apartment complex in Makakilo were evacuated early this morning because of fire inside one of the units. Honolulu firefighters and police responded to the scene at around 3:15 a.m. near Makakilo Drive. Upon arrival, HFD said crews discovered a small blaze at the electrical panel in the unit. They were able to extinguish the fire quickly and secure ventilation of the home, as well as another unit. One resident told H&N she woke up to the fire department knocking on her door, telling her to get out. Folks had to wait to get back inside their homes. There have been no reports of any injuries, and an investigation into the exact cause of the fire remains ongoing.
U.S.-based airlines have canceled over 120,000 flights so far this year. Today, travel website The Points Guy is releasing its 6th annual Best Airlines report to help consumers book their next getaway. Coming in at number 5 is Alaska Airlines. American Airlines ranks at number 4. Number 3 is United Airlines. Number 2, Southwest. And topping the list for the 4th year in a row, Delta Airlines. Brian Kelly, CEO and founder of The Points Guy, explains why.
And honestly, not every airline is the same. Delta only had just over 1 complaint per 100,000 travelers to the DOT. Delta does do a good job. I flew them recently, and even though there was a delay at JFK, they put frequent flyer miles automatically in everyone's account. So I do think Delta goes a step above and beyond in the consumer. They're also the most expensive airline. So I think it's interesting, though, and they're profitable. So consumers are willing to pay to be treated like humans. I think that's the key theme we're seeing.
Speaking of cost, airfares continuing to drop from those inflation vacation prices we saw at the beginning of the summer. Here's CBS News senior travel advisor Peter Greenberg.
Airfares are down about 27% since May, and by the end of next week, they'll be down another 20%. And as we get into September, they may even fall off a cliff as people elect to stop flying, stop traveling, kids are back in school, people are back at their workplace. So seasonality combined with less demand, lower airfares.
The busy summer travel season exposing problems with staffing, scheduling, and the handling of bad weather. And some travel experts say, unless big changes are made, upcoming holiday travel could be anything but merry.
We're going to see the same results, cancellations and delays when it's the worst time possible, when you need to get to see family or carry on business.
And as a little bit of hope going into the fall, yesterday there were only 92 flight cancellations in the US. Things are getting better. I'm an eternal optimist. I always check my flight. I use FlightAware, which always check to see where your aircraft's coming in from. You can set alerts for your flight. Always get the airline app. And when possible, there are credit cards that offer flight delay and interruption coverage. So just by putting a flight on a credit card that has that coverage built in, if you're delayed in the airport, need to get a hotel room, usually the airlines won't cover that, but your credit card can. So always look to your credit card coverage.
I'm watching those airfare prices. Hope they drop soon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, check this out, you guys. NASA has big goals. So the agency wants to send humans back to the moon, which hasn't happened in 50 years. And they want to land the first woman and the first person of color on the lunar surface by the year 2025. It all begins when the Artemis 1 mega moon rocket launches at the end of the month. The massive 322-foot tall spaceship was slowly rolled out onto the launch pad last night. So if it doesn't look like it's moving, that's because it's got a top speed of 1 mile an hour. But trust me, it's making its way to the pad. Now, launch is set for Monday, August 29th, with plans to go beyond the moon and then return to Earth. There won't be anyone on board, but there will be 120 pounds of mementos, including toys, Apollo 11 items, and 3 mannequins, along with a number of science experiments. NASA is also hoping to make way for human exploration of Mars.
Speaking of space, live right now, an astronaut at the ISS is talking to school kids. Right now, he's showing off what they're eating in space. I love that. Oh, look at his snack floating around there. Very cool live picture coming to us today at noon. There's one of the school children's asking a question right there as well. Love when they do that.
Yeah.
Adorable, right?
It looks like that package said cereal.
Yeah, was that cereal?
I don't know.
Ooh. Yeah, I hope for some Captain Crunch. All right, guys, let's see what the weather's going to be like. Here's Guy Hockey.
We got more hot, sticky weather. Why? Because of the lack of trade winds today. Now, tomorrow, we're expecting the winds to make a slow comeback. Notice the timeline. And then by Friday, they'll be back to breezy levels. So 2 more days, today and tomorrow, still going to be a little bit sticky. And then when those breezy trade winds take over, they'll hold firm through the weekend into the early part of next week. So the weather's going to change a little bit then as well. Your 7-day forecast looking good with lots of sunshine. However, it is going to be humid today and tomorrow with the winds running mostly under 15 miles an hour. And then the winds pick up significantly starting on Friday. Humidity levels will drop, comfort levels go up, and we'll see a few more windward and Mauka showers about that time. Not enough to get us out of the drought, but we'll take whatever rain we can get, right? And those breezy winds will hang on through Monday, easing up again on Tuesday.
Staff at the Kauai Humane Society are trying to wrap their minds around a disturbing break-in over the weekend. 2 dogs that were being boarded in their kennels died. Our Dylan Ancheta spoke to the executive director.
Do you want to just give us maybe your own first-hand account of what happened, what you guys stumbled upon there?
Yeah, so in the early morning of Sunday, just last Sunday, we had a staff member come into work at about 5 a.m. and find around 20 dogs in the parking lot, which was a clear sign that something had gone awry. As she moved closer to the building, she was able to identify that we had been broken into, and she called her manager, and we immediately started calling in extra staff to assist, and of course the police department that was very quickly came to our aid. What had happened was nothing was stolen, but all of the dogs in our care, which was 75 animals, were released from their kennels, and a door was left open for them to leave the shelter. So we had a few that have some minor injuries. We have a couple that are being looked at for gastrointestinal issues. And unfortunately, we have 2 that are deceased because after finding their way to the parking lot, they found their way to the street and were hit by vehicles, and ultimately it caused their demise.
When you say they left the door open, is it the door open that leads to the outdoor, or was it one of the perimeter fences that was left open?
So it led to one of our back parking lot areas. They clearly were trying to get the animals, or to have the animals leave the shelter. For what reason, I'm unsure of, except for just a malicious act. But they had propped open the door to ensure that the animals could escape the shelter and get into the parking lot and just become very endangered. They had access to areas that could be quite hazardous, which is why we needed to keep them under medical observation. They were ingesting things that they should not be eating. And then they were overeating as well, because they tore into food bags and did all that. So, I mean, yes, we're very grateful that the situation turned out how it did, because it could have been a lot worse. We could have had far more aggressive animals. We could have had more animals make it to the road. But the staff was really quick to respond, and we were able to get everyone back in and under observation quite quickly.
You said the facility was, quote, ill-prepared for something like this because you folks never thought it could happen. And I know this is also an opportunity to call for fundraising for a new security system, but what do you think could have prevented something like this from happening? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, KHS even historically has been very fortunate. The history of break-ins has been very minimal, and with spans of like years in between, and was typically someone going for a specific animal or for a specific item, so that there was no robbery involved at all is quite odd for us. I mean, our security system is very basic. We're a small, community organization. We don't have anything that's really very valuable. When we talk financial value, I mean, obviously we think our animals are invaluable, but when it comes to actually something you could profit off of, we don't really have those sort of materials. So it wasn't something that was really needed for us historically. We've been proven wrong.
We're still talking about back to school today here in the H&N Digital Center. And studies show not getting enough rest can severely impact a teen's body and brain. NBC's Erin McLaughlin takes a look at what one state is doing to help kids get more sleep.
It's the first week of school in San Bernardino, California. And 17-year-old Josiah Reyes gets to sleep in an extra hour, thanks to a new mandate in the Golden State, requiring most middle schools to start no earlier than 8 a.m. and high schools at 8:30, all to help students get more sleep.
I think it's way better. Just being able to wake up a little later, getting even saving that hour, it really does make a difference, because I still go to bed around the same time.
Do you feel more rested?
I feel way more rested, yeah.
His school, Summit High, used to start at 7:30. Now with that extra hour, Josiah even has time to eat breakfast, giving him a needed boost in his AP classes.
Before they changed your school start time, problems thinking, problems functioning.
Yeah, it was always it was a routine at this point, wanting to fall asleep in second period, because second period I was already done, I'm out.
He's not alone. Today, 70% of teens are sleep deprived. And while social media may poke fun at the problem, it's no joke. Studies link it to everything from lower grades to higher risks for obesity, depression, and suicidal thoughts.
This is a public health issue.
Advocate Lisa Lewis helped petition for later school start times in California. In her new book, The Sleep-Deprived Teen, she documents 3 decades of research showing how it helps teens.
When schools shift to later start times, attendance goes up, tardies and absences go down, grades go up. It boosts their emotional resiliency.
Though the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends teens get between 8 to 10 hours of sleep, changes in their circadian rhythms actually prevent them from becoming sleepy before 11 p.m.
They're not biologically able to. Even if you were to, tell them they had to go to bed at 9, chances are they're just going to lay there and stare at the ceiling.
What do you say to critics that would say, well, if school starts later, kids are just going to stay up later.
The research shows that they do stay up slightly later, but they more than make up for it with the additional sleep that they're able to gain.
Summit High senior Amaris Zarate says sleeping later has helped her be more attentive, including in cheer practice and on her drive home. One study found when schools went to later start times, drowsy driving accidents among teens dropped by 70%.
Because I have more sleep, I'm able to actually pay attention to what everyone else is doing around me.
You feel more alert.
Yes.
And safer.
Yes.
Her mom, Ashley, says it's even improved their relationship.
She's waking up a lot friendlier in the morning. She's not cranky. I'm actually able to interact with her a lot more.
So why do schools start so early? Back in the 1950s, most started around 9 a.m. But in the 70s, budget cuts caused districts to consolidate bus routes and stagger the start times for elementary, middle, and high schools.
Oftentimes they put the older kids in that earliest time slot, thinking, oh, well, teens should be best able to handle that. Well, now we know having a later start time is what is recommended for them.
Nationwide, New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts are also considering mandates for later school start times. These teens say the change is long overdue.
Could you use more sleep?
All the time. All the time we can use more sleep. But I think I'm getting enough sleep, which is good.
Could more sleep really help with the grumpy teen problem? Really? Is that the solution? I don't know.
Just the teen hormones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take a later start time, though.
Yeah.
Please, bring it on.
Mhm.
Bring it on. All right, big news from the auto world. Fiat Chrysler is putting its popular gas-powered Dodge Challenger and Charger models in the rear-view mirror. The company is ending production of those models next year. The iconic muscle cars first appeared in the 1960s and 1970s and were revived in the 2000s. We see them all around town here. The company said in 2023 that will be the final model year for the Charger and the Challenger in their current forms. This comes as the automaker and other automakers move away from gas-powered cars to invest in EVs. Yeah.
Some food news you guys like. Chick-fil-A will begin testing out new breakfast bites. So they're chorizo cheddar egg bites. Each order has 4 egg bites, and the chain says it will be baked in-house every morning. And these are going to debut next week. It's the first new breakfast entree since Chick-fil-A's hash brown scramble bowl joined the nationwide menu in 2017. It says they're in response to guests asking for more bite-sized, shareable breakfast options. Now, guest feedback will help determine if it stays on the menus nationwide. Papa John's is expanding its menu with a crustless surprise.
Huh?
Papa Bowls, that's right. They're all toppings, no crust. So there are 3 versions available: garden veggie, chicken Alfredo, and Italian meats trio. The pizza giant says these bowls offer a healthier alternative for consumers. So Papa John says its sales are on the rise, but on a smaller scale compared to the year before. And it hopes these Papa Bowls will cause a spike. They'll be available next week nationwide.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Let's get
it's
to
all
some-
relative, healthy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And good news, we want to wish good luck to our Honolulu Baseball All-Stars in the Little League World Series today. After sweeping through the West Region Tournament with 3 straight wins, they're in the big show. They're going to play a team from Bonnie Lake, Sumner, Washington. You can watch them in half an hour, 1 p.m. our time here in Hawaii on ESPN.
Did you play Little League?
No.
No?
I played softball for like 2 years, but that was it.
I was in Little League. I was on the Cardinals and the Yankees.
Oh, very cool.
Yes. I had the best baseball coach, Bonnie Vaughn, my friend Chris Vaughn's mom. She was amazing. I think she was the first woman coach in my
Awesome.
town. She was amazing. She was like one of those nice coaches that let you try out any position.
Right.
Thank you, Bonnie. All right, guys, that's going to do it for This Is Now on this, Wednesday? Okay, a couple days left. Have a good one, guys. Almost to that weekend.